going live on YouTube right now. And let me go ahead and start the recording on my end. And Purdeep, are you going to record on your end?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
All right.
So is the voice quality okay, Nathan? Means I'm coming through to you well?
Fantastic.
You are great.
All right.
Okay.
This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 107. Wow. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur, the podcast for men who win, as you can see on Purdeep's shirt if you're watching the YouTube version of the podcast. And we've got a very special guest lined up for this week's episode. Purdeep, I'm going to hand it over to you and play a fly on the wall.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so I'm super excited about bringing this guest on. He is someone that I got to know probably about a couple of years ago. I don't even recall where we just randomly met, but I came out for one of his sessions. And more importantly, I wanted to have him on the podcast here today because every single time I have a conversation with him, it is the deepest conversation. It is extremely thought-provoking. And he's a gentleman that I can say asks the right questions to get people thinking and really get, you can say, people inspired from a perspective of doing more without having to actually do more. It's really interesting. So here we're just going to introduce Dr. Parmjit Singh. He is a professor at McMaster University, is a very well-known university in Canada, in the health sciences and in the business school as well. And he's worked in terms of the work that he's done, the studies that he's done. He's worked with corporate organizations such as Microsoft, the Fairmont Group of hotels, as well as a number of other, you can say, industries or sectors as well, including pharmaceuticals. So if you check out his website at the end, we're going to give that information. He's got a ton of, you can say, accolations in terms of work that he's done. But I want to bring him in as a friend and someone that can totally provide value to a person's life. So thanks, Parmjit, for joining us on the show here today.
Thank you, Purdeep. I thank you for your kind introduction. I'm very grateful to be here and having a conversation with you and Nathan in the background.
So I just want to ask, what do you do? Because Nathan and I have talked about this topic of mindfulness. I'm a practitioner myself, but you're an expert. You're like the professor. You're like the guy that people go to. What is it that you do, and the importance of mindfulness? I'm just going to throw it out at you.
So I have 3 layers of work which I do. So one is academia, which means I teach at university, both in business school and medicine and health sciences. And then I do the second layer of work with the corporate coaching and consulting, in which I have shared my work with Microsoft, Fairmont Hotel Group, Willis Towers and Watson, and some pharmaceutical companies. And the third part I do is a community service, so which is the same kind of programs I offer within the community as a way of service. So it's the same quality, everything same, but it is actually done in a different intention to help people who are in need, but may not be able to actually reach us through the corporate world. So that's the 3 layers of work I do. And this is all revolves around the integration of my personal practice, which I've done many, many years. I started as a teenager as a kind of intellectual dabbling. And then over the years of my professional education, at one point when I came to Canada, I realized that actually there's a value in bringing these two together. It took me many years to do that, but I think over the past 10 years or so, I have actually come to the point where my professional life and the personal life has started to harmonize, which means the things I do in my personal life are the one I do in professional life and vice versa, which has been uniquely meaningful, because then the difference between the work and life has actually almost disappeared, because what I love to do is what I earn living from.
Yeah, that's very lucky. I could say not everybody gets to do that. So let's just jump right into it. Mindfulness. Why is it so important? What are you seeing in society? Like, this is a big question that I'm asking you, but what's happening? Are there trends that you're seeing in people, whether that's healthier living, maybe not so healthy, but what's happening in society? Why is mindfulness so important?
So mindfulness is important for a variety of reasons. But before we get into the cultural, social, business aspect of it, maybe we'll take time to unpack what exactly it is, so that our viewers are in the loop with us. So mindfulness is a very systematic manner of training your mind by purposefully paying attention to what's really going on in your life. So the way you make decisions, the way you react to things, the way you manage your emotions, the way you relate to your spouse, the way you actually work with your kids, and the way you work through life with you are a citizen, discharge your responsibility. So that's essentially how the mindfulness is. It's a systematic way of training your mind so that it is actually very intentional, non-reactive, and you have a handle on things. So that's a kind of a very general way of speaking about mindfulness, but there's a specific way how we train for it. So there's a 3-step process through which we train our mind to be more optimal, more non-reactive, more intentional, more purposeful, so that if you're trying to make a decision within the context of life or business, it's very purposeful. It's not reactive. It's not impulsive. It's not automatic. It's not driven by runaway emotions. So those 3 steps are very simple. And we do these things day-to-day life, but this is a very intentional way of tweaking some of those steps. So first step is observe. And the second step is acknowledge. And the third step is see if you don't react to what comes after observation. So we choose to observe something, and the observation is going to generate a story or a narrative or a thought process or an emotion. And then when that emotion comes to you, you have a couple of options. Either you can be swept by it, that will be automatic way of dealing with the emotion, or you can take a moment and pause and just don't react to that emotion or to decision or whatever is there in front of you, and you do not react to that or do not respond to that, at least immediately. And that moment of pause and that moment of intentionality, that moment of deliberate pause, there can give you a kind of a powerful leverage to use the emotional aspect of whatever is really happening in this moment to your advantage. So that's the third step. And all this happens in the larger context of what we call everything is temporary. It means the emotion comes, it is there for a moment, and if you get swept in it, it actually takes you along, and then your decision making follows the suit, and you go into this kind of a rabbit hole of automatic impulsive way of decision making. And that's a huge implication if you are a big ticket leader. Or even from day-to-day life, if you're having argument with your spouse or your kids, having that moment where you can pause and you have trained your mind to be that way or reflective, it can have a powerful impact on the quality of relations. So essentially, the whole enterprise of mindfulness is based on those 3 things, at least in the terms of training your mind. That observe intentionally. So observation is going to create a narrative or a story, and the way you work with the story actually determine how you feel about the story and how the decision making follows from there on. And all this happens in the context that things are always temporary. Things come and go. Everything has a shelf life. Thoughts have a shorter shelf life. Physical things have a longer shelf life, but none of it actually ever stays here forever. So that's essentially the training part of the mindfulness. And then it is actually scaffolded on one side as a moral, ethical aspect of the practice. And the other side is actually what we call experiential learning, that we speak from the experience. And that has a powerful implication, the way we live our life day-to-day basis, and the way we make decisions day-to-day basis, the way we relate to others, the way the people who are in a leadership position manage their employees or put into practice strategy sessions and all sort of things. So that's actually a shorter version of which could be actually long discussion why what mindfulness is and how it can be very impactful in the long scheme of things.
Well, okay, so going back to my other question, thank you, because I could tell every time you talk, it's like, okay, I'm just listening for those bits and nuggets, because you can tell you're a great professor from that standpoint. What are you seeing? Why are people more open to mindfulness? And if they are, because you and I had a conversation prior to you coming onto the show of the importance of mindfulness and how mindfulness has somewhat become commercialized in a way as well.
Go ahead, finish your thought.
Sorry, go ahead. So what, for everybody saying, okay, great, I can think better, I can make better decisions. When we get into the overall impact, do you see people talking about mindfulness more? Do you see people practicing it more? Do you see society actually moving towards a more mindful direction or not?
I think there's few moving parts to this question. One is that why mindfulness has become so common, and it's pretty fashionable. It is not actually, it's not an understatement to say that mindfulness has become is in vogue and it's become fashionable. And there's a good side to it, which means a lot more people know about it. The bad side of it, that there's actually a lot of mischaracterization and miscommunication about what exactly it is. So it has become a kind of a fashion statement that I practice mindfulness. And I often sometimes, because the kind of work I do, I often meet people and they will say, I practice mindfulness, and they'll needle them a little bit, not at a way to embarrass them, but just to clarify things, that are we on the same page, the way you think about mindfulness and the way I think about mindfulness, the way I practice it. So there's issues related to that. The second part of the question is why it has become important. I think our culture has evolved in the past maybe 20 years or so with the technology and all stuff coming, and it has become incredibly difficult for individual to be present or stay present. They're always hijacked by what comes next. The ding on the phone, the notification from the email, the phone calls, the ever-present connectivity has actually hijacked our attention to the point that it's incredibly difficult for us to appreciate what we have in front of us. So that means that we don't appreciate our home life, we don't appreciate our kids, we don't appreciate, or at least to the extent that could happen and which is meaningful, our spouses. And when we don't appreciate what is in front of us, we often start to lose value and how valuable they are. Because paying attention is an act of affection, it's an act of warmth, it's an act of appreciative, it's an act of respect. It's ultimately what we are trying to learn in a very strange way is to be respectful. Means that the term that's just thrown around in almost every corridor of politics and business and academia, that how to be respectful. There's a way to be respectful, but can we be respectful to the things that are in front of us? And that can happen only if we pause and really acknowledge what is in front of us, and whatever that could be. Some of those things could be pleasant, some of those things could be unpleasant. But it is fascinating that, to me at least, that's the way I look at it, that essentially as a society, we're trying to learn a different way to be respectful to what we already have, rather than losing everything in this mad race of what we should have or could have. So that's the second part of the question. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say that's very powerful because I didn't even think about it. And that's why I love talking to you, because I always think of things from a different perspective. It's just simple respect. Just whatever's in front of you, just giving it that basic attention that every single person deserves is the basic foundation of how society runs. Without that attention, without that respect, we have a lack of, you can say, not just mindfulness, but a lack of how people interact.
And lack of meaningful, lack of meaning, actually.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because relationships now, what is the meaning of a relationship now? I think that's starting to change as well, and that's starting to shift based on technology and with social media, because I see a lot of the younger generation feeling, and I don't know, I come from a different era where a relationship where they've never met a person, where they've never seen that person, in front of them live, maybe on technology, but they feel like they have a relationship with that person, but they don't have that need to really, meet them firsthand. So I know Nathan is itching for a question here as well.
Please jump in, Nathan.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of high performing people, we either intuitively know this or we actively practice it in certain aspects of our life. We realize just giving an emotional response to something without considering what's really going on, without considering the side effects or the implications of something, we realize that that's not the best way to live life. It's not what serves us best as business owners or as family men. And a lot of people just kind of walk through their entire life on autopilot in every aspect of their life. And we've picked out certain aspects of our life where we say it doesn't serve us to go on autopilot here, but then in other aspects of our life, we still live on autopilot. And my question is it okay to live on autopilot in other areas, or should we be working towards eliminating that autopilot feature on all areas of our life? It seems like sometimes it might serve us, but then in the long run, it does a lot of disservice. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on why some people are able to, it clicks and it makes sense to be mindful about certain aspects of our life, but we still run around on autopilot on other aspects.
So just to add to your thought process, Nathan, I think there are certain areas of human endeavor and the things we do from day-to-day life, automatic reactions could be very useful. For example, you are on a road and suddenly you see a bus hurtling toward you. That automatic reaction, that is going to be literally life-saving. However, in other circumstances, automatic reactions can be less than helpful or even harmful to some extent. So from a leader who is making an impulsive decision can have a long-term ramification on the quality of whatever comes after. It could have a ramification in the terms of employees and their well-being and their future. So I think you just actually unpacked your own answer in some ways, that I think we need to develop. The way I look at it, we need to develop a clarity where automatic reactions could be very useful way to have, but not always being automatic. So if we can actually approach this idea that can we have this kind of a almost dichotomous way of thinking, contradictory way of thinking, that we can cultivate that our mind in a way that it can respond to where it need to respond automatically, and it's a helpful way to respond to that circumstances. But otherwise, it should be more deliberate and intentional. I think that's a healthier way to approach, because I do not think that it's a logically valid aspiration to think about that we can eliminate automatic responses. That's a evolutionary defense mechanism we have. So I would not like to actually literally have my brain turn off that part of the brain, that part of the reactionary system. I would like to train myself so that I can see clearly where automatic reactions are useful and where automatic reactions can be really harmful. And then it becomes a very meaningful way to work through the assets we have as humans, because we are using what we have. So a lot of stuff comes from the evolutionary systems, which is very difficult to defeat. So that's my 2 cents in this regards.
Thank you.
Yeah, wow, awesome question, Nathan. I think that was very powerful. And now, Parmjit, you're doing some research, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, with the impact of yoga on men with addiction, for example. Is that something that you started?
Yes, actually, 2 of my students actually a few years back actually did this this study, which they are in the process of publication now. And one of the instructor had actually personal challenges. So there's a 2 aspect of the study. Study is not only academically relevant, but it's actually personally relevant. One of the instructor had actually issues with the substance abuse, and he became a yoga teacher, and he wanted to see that because yoga and its practice and all the associated practice helped him, he wanted to see, could I actually take this and help other men who are struggling with the same issues? So he actually came up with the protocol with another individual, and they did this trial study, and actually it worked very well. So a lot of men, in fact, were positively impacted. And remembering that yoga is especially when it is practiced correctly, not a athleticized, modernized yoga, but the old school, intentional way of practice can be powerful way to break that cycle of craving and dependence and addiction, and that goes through it. And as a kind of a supplementary note to that, some of the research in the mindfulness areas has suggested that mindfulness strategy to break out of addiction or addictive behavior is actually a lot more impactful than the conventional strategies. And in one of the studies, these guys, in fact, asked people to smoke. Um, but asked them to smoke with a sense of curiosity. So this is actually a very important point, which is very relevant across the sections, whether you talk about business people or medical people or normal day-to-day life kind of living individuals, is that curiosity is actually powerful way to work through things, especially if you are faced with unpleasant experience in life. If you in fact think of it unpleasant or pleasant, you are boxing yourself. But if you approach the same experience from a standpoint of a curiosity, that let me see what really bothers me. I want to unpack a little bit. I don't want to box it that it's bad, or I don't want to think that it's going to be good or turn out to be good, but I want to be curious about it. And there's a couple of things happen when you think about those things from a curiosity perspective. One is curiosity is actually naturally rewarding. It activates some of the reward systems in the brain, the same way it does all other things pleasure-seeking behavior does. So when we are curious, it opens our mind, it opens our way we work with the things. And suddenly you have actually figured out a way to work with the unpleasant experience or craving or emotion or a relationship or a decision from an entirely different standpoint. You're not boxed in. You're not wedded to a particular opinion. You're not wedded to a particular outcome. You're just taking a kind of playful approach to this. This is where the kid stuff comes in. And that's why in fact, kids like to play, because playing is rewarding in itself. I think Nathan has another question.
No, I think Nathan, yeah, so basically, this is great information from a curiosity standpoint. We're coming up to a close here. So Parmjit, I just want to basically, get you to sum it up when it comes to mindfulness. If you could say the importance or what it is, whatever it is in one sentence, what is the last piece of insight or advice or any message you want to give to the audience here?
So I would say that training your mind to be more impactful, to be intentional, is a powerful way to utilize the resources we already have. Means mind will either function automatically, or it can be trained to become more purposeful, intentional, and deliberative. And if we can actually cultivate that kind of mind, it can literally shift the landscape we live, and literally shift the way we make decisions, the way we relate to others, the way the meaningfulness again be actually right in front of us if we choose to seek it. It's just learning the old trick of being respectful. Means one of the Zen masters say that being mindful is being respectful to your life, showing up in your life. And sometimes we are not present in our lives. We are not present in our relationship. We are not present in our decision making. And I think that's where mindfulness can be a very easily learnable tool to learn that. And the beauty of this is that you can learn it. It's nothing mysterious about it.
It's awesome. I love it. And that's, again, why I love having you, or just in terms of having conversations, is I'm cut out here with a bunch of notes that I'm going to be taking. So Parmjit, where can people go to find out more about you?
So I have a fully functioning website. If they're looking for resources like research, I have website, my name, .com. So parmjitsingh.com, parmjitsingh.com. And that's actually fully functioning website. You can look for resources, research, look for stuff I have done before. And if you want to reach out to me for any reason, conversations, coaching, I'm happy to actually talk. Or they can call me on my phone, 289-339-3464. I'm happy to chat.
I'm sure you're going to get some people either emailing you or calling you for sure. Nathan, I don't know if you got it.
I just want to say, fascinating conversation. It's one of those things that I find a lot of times people get to a certain point in their life and they realize that all of the stuff that they were working for is not as important as having a good relationship with themselves and having a good mindset and having mindfulness. And it's one of those things that's way more important than, maybe it's just the culture that I grew up in, but I feel like, at least in the West, we don't put enough emphasis on it. We're all about success, and we're all about keeping up with the Joneses, and not enough attention is paid to having a healthy mindset. And it's an important message. And so I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with our listeners.
No, thank you so much, Nathan. I would add, if we have a few moments, or means our conversation can continue, that in fact means much of the East and West is geographical. I think it's attention is still paid. It depends upon where attention is rested. So West has done all these remarkable things, means they developed such a remarkable technology and has done such so well in capital way of thinking about things. It's only has come because they have choose to pay attention which is outside of them. So interestingly enough, both East and West actually meet at some point, that attention has to be paid if you want to succeed. It all depends upon where the attention rests. So if attention is inside, like East did it, they remained poor, but at the same time, they cultivated a technology which is actually surpasses anything. So I think what we need to learn here is actually how can we shift this attention mode so that we can shift in when we create, we need to check in, we need to be paused, we need to be reflective, we need to be intentional. And then from that standpoint, we can look out so that whatever we are paying attention, it comes from a place of restfulness, peacefulness, and a state of clarity. And I think that's what we need to learn, and it's all doable, because if one can pay attention outside of them, they can be trained to, in fact, pay attention inside of them. Not difficult, but challenging, of course.
Thank you. So again, so much value there. And I have a feeling that we're going to have you on again, Parmjit. So thank you very much. And I truly appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much, both of you, for having me. And I would love to have conversation. These conversations can go for a long time, but that's the fun part of it.
Awesome. And for the listener out there, if you want to check out more, head on over to
YouTubeformen.com or mailpodcast.com.
Awesome. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Can't wait.
Right.